Well, so the guiding principles, for the work after I completed my DMT study 20 years ago now, were the words of two mentors. One was a psychiatrist, Daniel Friedman, whose mantra about psychedelics were, if, so what? If DMT, causes these effects, so what? What's it good for? What does it mean? What can we learn from it? Okay, so hopefully I've, covered or been influenced by those guiding principles, like if, so what? And we must at the very least enlarge the discussion about psychedelics. So as quite a few of you know, when you take a full dose of DMT, it starts to work very quickly. There's a rush of inner pressure and acceleration. And then within a minute or so, there's the experience of the separation of the mind and body. And you enter into a world of bright, rapidly moving light. Your sense of self is maintained. There's not really very often a merging with a white light. There's intense emotion sometimes, sometimes there's not much emotion at all. And it's usually, contains some intelligences of some sort or another, more or less, recognizable. They may look, kind of humanoid or reptilian or bird-like, mammalian, robotic. Even furniture could, seem, to possess an intelligence and a sentience. Even the patterns, seem to contain intelligence. The unformed, visual patterns. And it's quite highly interactive. It isn't like you're just, kind of unified with anything. You're dealing with all that stuff out there. It's dealing with you, you're dealing with it. There's a lot of give and take. You're able to control your awareness. It isn't a, passive state in as much as you're immobilized, but your mind is active and, kind of determining what's going on around you. Since I stopped my work 20 years ago, I've been, thinking about it, obviously, most of the time. And so one of the, things that has been helpful in thinking about the spiritual or the religious, properties of these, substances, or of any spiritual experience is to dichotomize them between what I call a mystical unitive state and an interactive relational one. So to read the Hebrew Bible is not easy. It's a very tough nut to crack, let me tell you. There's a certain resonance between the spoken voice and the words and your brain and your spirit that I think are they're optimally activated when you read out loud. And if you really study the book, carefully, once you read it through a number of times, you begin entering into a specific state, like it's an altered state, which was very curious. So you're kind of, resonating with the state out of which, the text emerged. And it's a prophetic text, so you're kind of entering into a prophetic altered state. Yeah, so if you want to, get a, sense of the, psychedelic quality of, some of the visions in the Hebrew Bible, the first chapter of Ezekiel is pretty DMT-like. So the heavens open and, and he saw visions, a stormy wind, he was being blown around. There was a, great cloud, flashing fire, brilliance all around, lightning. And beings emerged from the fire with a number of different faces. They ran to and fro without their legs moving. Their backs and wings were full of eyes. The beings were flying through space. The sound of the wings, the expanse over their heads like blue sapphire or like a rainbow. It's just too much for Ezekiel, and he just falls down. And so the angel picks him back up and starts speaking to him. Pulls him by the hair, carries him through space. What could be more DMT-like? Yeah, so one of the, we have to kind of, wonder about, the power of, the Bible. And I think it's because it's a prophetic text. It's like a spiritual text, which, came out of a specific state. And I think that state has a tremendous amount of power. Look at all of you, because you're here, because of, the psychedelic state. And there's, clearly an overlap between the psychedelic and the prophetic state. And the staying power, the influence of the text, I think, relates, to it being a description of spiritual experience of a certain type. Well, so shamanism also proposes, the reality of the DMT beings and the DMT world. And specifically, specifically, for goals, like for healing, for harming, locating lost objects, for the benefit of the community. So in comparing, religious models and, scientific models, concerning, the nature of the DMT world, they're both interested in these previously invisible worlds, and also they provide, mechanisms by which to understand what's happening. So one of the advantages of the religious models is that they suggest why things are configured in this way, like a purpose, as it were. It's a reflection of a higher order of intelligence or wisdom or will. So the model that I propose towards the end of my first DMT book is what one might call soft neurotheology. In other words, as a result of brain chemistry changes, your consciousness is now able to perceive things which are normally invisible but objectively real, such as dark matter and parallel universes. And also it would provide the ability to interact with and apprehend the contents of those parallel sorts of worlds, ongoing parallel levels of ongoing reality. So that proposes the reality of the DMT world. So I came up with a new model to kind of counterbalance the neurotheology model. And this is what I call Theoneurology, which is kind of a top-down model, as opposed to the bottom-up neurotheological model. So hopefully people will think about it and begin developing it. And hopefully it will integrate theistic and materialistic models. So it will include both rigor and wisdom. And ultimately it's based on medieval metaphysics, from Maimonides in particular. And it proposes mostly, or more or less, that the activation of our intellect and our imagination takes place by God. So the activation of our imagination is responsible for the contents of the state, the visions and the voices. And the activation of our intellect, then allows us to extract the meaning, from those visions and those voices. So one new category I came up with when I was comparing the two states, like I spent maybe 3 years, looking through the Bible over and over and over again, and bending the descriptions in the Bible into the categories I had developed, using the skanda system, for the DMT state, like perception, cognition, emotion, those kinds of things, so in the description of Ezekiel falling on his face, so that's a physical effect. So I would bend that description into physical effect. But after a while, it didn't. In making that comparison, it didn't quite seem like I was capturing all of the similarities or the differences. And so I developed a new concept called relatedness, which then started to tease apart or make clearer the difference between the DMT and the prophetic states, because the quality of the relatedness was much more highly articulated, in the descriptions of the prophetic experience as compared, to the descriptions of, the relatedness that my DMT volunteers brought back. So it's a means of, communicating, and, primarily verbal. When you're in, the DMT state, there is an attempt, by the beings to communicate. And, one of the, common complaints of the volunteers is they couldn't quite understand what the beings were saying to them. Either they were too anxious, or they didn't understand the language, or it was too soft. One of the, things, that you'll see in the Hebrew Bible is, that it's, mostly verbal communication. There are, clearly visions, but the visions either represent some verbal message, or are just intended to get the attention of the prophet in order to start speaking with him. So when you begin to do deep study of the text, it is an altered state, and it is stimulated by, and it resonates, with, the visions and the voices and the feelings. But I think more importantly, it, resonates, with the message of this state. It's as if you're being spoken to about, something that's quite, fundamental, as opposed to just, seeing things which are amazing and unusual. So this is one of the most important points I want to make is, when you're tripping, there are these visions, but there's also this, sense of knowing, something new. You're kind of getting something that you've never gotten before. And that's an intellectual apprehension. That's not a perceptual apprehension. So when you're, reading the Hebrew Bible, you start to get a glimpse of what that intellectual apprehension might possibly, be that you're glimpsing in the psychedelic state. Or that's, kind of how I started to, to conceptualize it. Yeah, so you're kind of, in a way closing in on God's mind. If, the text is a prophetic text and prophecy is communication between us and, the divine, then you're getting into or approaching, the mind of divinity. And you can also, instead of opening up to love or being mindful or, letting go, you could pray. You could pray to God, for help. As opposed to, letting go or, feeling love or those kinds of things. It's a more, it's more of an interactive way of, dealing with, the psychedelic state. If you're in a tight spot, you could pray. You could pray to something, which isn't you, because it isn't all you. Well, if you are then able to start to understand the text as, kind of a specific way of approaching the psychedelic state, then it adds a dimension, to the experience, like on top of the emotions and, the perceptions. So we can think about it, and we can talk about it. It isn't ineffable anymore. Everything's ineffable. But some things are more ineffable than others. So if you can make it less ineffable, I think you've got like a head start. As opposed to saying you can't talk about it, you can say, well, you can talk about it, and it's kind of like this and it's kind of like that. There's one God, and there's intermediaries, and there's providence, and there's reward and punishment. So how does that kind of manifest within your own psychedelic experience? Let's say. So it isn't, that you're purely, remembering a sense or a, feeling that you had back then. You've got, more to take home and to chew on and to write about and to think about, to converse with your colleagues and friends with. So, the phenomenology is, one thing, but, the phenomenology kind of expresses the message. It's, like a symbolic representation of the message. And the message is more verbal in the prophetic text. And so that makes you wonder, can the Hebrew Bible, which is a spiritual text describing a DMT-like world, help us extract information from the DMT state? So what is the prophetic message? Well, it mostly has to deal with the nature of reality and how to relate to it, the highest possible manner, to do the least harm and do the most good. Yeah, so the other aspect of the message of the text is relating to everything else other than the spiritual world, and so that's the golden rule, which is in Leviticus, and the golden rule in the Hebrew Bible is different than the golden rule in the Christian Bible. In the Hebrew Bible, it's a little more elevated, it's a little more idealistic, I suppose. Love your neighbor as yourself, as opposed to as opposed to treating others as you would like to be treated. So this speaks about love, for example, rather than narcissism or self-servingness.